Story 1. Look, I'm not one of those nature is my church types. I don't wake up at sunrise to salute the trees or drink tea brewed from moss or whatever. I came out here because I needed to get away. From people, from noise, from that creeping feeling in the back of my skull, telling me I was about 2 emails away from cracking like cheap glass. So yeah, I packed a tent, a 6-pack, and a questionable attitude, and drove 3 hours into Nowhere National Forest. The campsite was decent, flat ground, a little clearing, the smell of pine, and just enough cell service to tell the world I'd gone off the grid before losing signal entirely. By sunset, I'd downed 3 beers and was half asleep in my tent, wrapped in my sleeping bag like some kind of sweaty burrito. Then I heard it, static, like an old TV tuned to a dead channel. At first I thought it was the wind in the trees, but no, that sound was sharp, crackling. It was coming from somewhere out there, in the dark. I told myself it was probably nothing, probably just some hunter with a busted walkie-talkie. But the sound kept going, long bursts of static, then short ones like it was saying something. I grabbed my flashlight, slipped on my boots, and unzipped the tent. The forest was colder than I remembered, and the beam of light from my flashlight barely cut through the dark. The static was louder now, pulling me like a rope around my throat. After maybe 5 minutes of stumbling over roots and cursing under my breath, I found it. An old radio, the kind your granddad probably owned, big and boxy, sitting dead center on a moss-covered tree stump. The thing was busted, half the knobs missing, the antenna bent at a sad angle, but it was definitely on, hissing and crackling like it was fighting to stay alive. And then, Alex! It said my name, clear as day, like someone whispering it just behind my ear. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up, and my stomach turned to ice water. I leaned closer because apparently I'm a moron, and for a split second, the static stopped. The whole forest stopped. No wind, no rustling leaves, no insects chirping, just silence so thick it felt like cotton shoved into my ears. And the sky looked fake, like a cheap theater backdrop painted with stars. The moon was wrong, too big, too bright, like someone had turned it up with a dimmer switch. I don't know how long I stood there staring at that stupid radio, but when my brain finally rebooted, I turned and bolted back to the tent. I didn't even try to hide how hard I was breathing. Screw dignity. When I got back, my tent was, well, let's just say it wasn't a tent anymore. The fabric was shredded, flaps hanging limp like a dead animal's skin. My sleeping bag was dragged halfway into the woods, like something had grabbed it and pulled, and the footprints, oh man, bare footprints, at least a dozen circling the tent. Long toes, deep imprints, and way too big for any human. They were fresh, pressed deep into the dirt, like whatever made them had weight. I didn't stick around. I grabbed my car keys from the torn remains of my tent, sprinted to my car, and peeled out of that forest like the devil himself was riding shotgun. I didn't even realize I was still clutching that damn radio until I was halfway home. It was sitting on the passenger seat, still spitting out faint bursts of static. I threw it in a dumpster behind a gas station. Sometimes, when I'm driving late at night, I swear I can hear it again, just faintly, crackling through the car speakers. And every now and then, when it's really quiet, I think I hear my name. If you ever hear static in the woods, just don't go looking for it. Trust me, some sounds aren't meant to be found. Story 2. Okay, I know how this sounds. I know. I've told myself 100 times that it was just the storm, or exhaustion, or maybe I had a microstroke. I don't know. But I need to say it out loud, or maybe just write it down, because it feels like if I don't, it'll start slipping away from me, like a dream you can't quite remember, but still leaves you sweaty and shaken. It was raining, hard. The kind of rain that makes you lean forward over the steering wheel and squint, even with the wipers going full blast. I was driving back from a work thing, a conference in some forgettable mountain lodge. The highway had been blocked by a rock slide, and my GPS rerouted me onto this narrow, winding road. No lights, no other cars. Just my high beams carving out 2 shaky tunnels in the downpour. I kept telling myself it was fine. I'd be home soon, warm in bed, with a beer and my phone plugged in beside me. But the rain just kept hammering down, and the forest on either side of the road felt, I don't know, hungry, like it was leaning in, trying to see who was stupid enough to be out there. Anyway, I was about halfway down the slope when I saw it. At first I thought it was a deer. It was crouched low on the shoulder, just at the edge of my high beams. But its arms, not legs, were too long, too thin, bent at sharp angles like sticks ready to snap. Its head snapped up as I passed, and I caught its eyes in the light. Reflective, round, human-looking. I know how it sounds, okay? I know. But those eyes locked onto mine as I drove past, and I swear to you, my foot hovered over the brake. But then some small survival instinct part of me screamed, keep driving. So I did. The thing didn't move. It just stayed there, crouched, neck craned up like it was watching me go. My pulse was in my throat, and I started mumbling to myself, like people do when they're trying not to freak out. Just a trick of the light, just some animal, just keep driving, keep driving. But then, the window, the passenger window, it fogged up, fast, like someone inside the car was breathing on it. I didn't realize until I glanced over, and there it was, a handprint. Not a child's hand, not a normal hand. The fingers were long, spindly, the palm was too narrow, and it was on the inside of the glass. I slammed on the brakes so hard I nearly skidded into the ditch. The car sat there, engine idling, hazard lights flashing against the trees. My chest was heaving, hands locked around the wheel. I couldn't look at the window again. I couldn't. But when I turned my head, when I forced myself to look, the handprint was gone. The window was clean, just streaks from the rain. That's when the sound started, a hum. Low, deep, like a bass note you feel in your sternum. It filled the car, made my teeth ache, made me dizzy, and then, nothing. I woke up in my driveway, engine off, keys in my lap. It was still dark out, but the rain had stopped. For a few seconds, I just sat there, blinking at my garage door, trying to piece together how I'd gotten home. Then I looked at the passenger seat. There were footprints, muddy, wet, smeared across the upholstery and the floor mat. They led from the window to the middle of the seat, then stopped. Like whatever left them had just vanished. The hum was still there, faint, like it was buried somewhere deep inside my skull. I got out of the car, went inside, locked every door, and didn't sleep until the sun came up. Even then I stayed on the couch, lights on, blanket clutched around me like a shield. The car's clean now. I scrubbed those footprints out, though it took hours. But sometimes, only sometimes, when I'm driving alone at night, I'll catch a faint fog on the passenger window, like someone's just finished breathing on it. Look, you don't have to believe me. Hell, I barely believe me. But whatever was out there on that mountain road, whatever pressed its hand against my window and left footprints in my car, I don't think it's finished with me yet. Story 3. I'm not the kind of person who jumps at shadows. I grew up on this farm, and I've spent more nights alone out here than I can count. Coyotes howling, branches scratching against the windows, even the occasional drunk teenager trying to scare themselves stupid on our property. I've seen it all. So when the power cut out during the storm that night, I wasn't rattled, not at first. The wind was howling, rain hammering against the tin roof, and the occasional flash of lightning painted the fields in stark white. I lit a couple of candles, made sure my phone was charged, and sat at the kitchen table with a glass of whiskey. Simple, calm. Then I heard the tapping. It was soft, rhythmic, coming from the kitchen window behind me. Tap, tap, tap. At first, I thought it was a loose branch in the wind, maybe some stray hail, but it was too deliberate, too slow. I turned around, held the candle up, and squinted into the dark glass. Nothing. Just my reflection staring back at me, flickering in the candlelight. The tapping stopped. I sat back down, convinced I was being stupid. But then it started again, this time from the other window, across the room. Tap, tap, tap. Okay. Now it had my attention. I walked over, leaned in close, and still nothing. But the feeling had changed. The air in the kitchen felt heavy, thick, like a storm was building inside the house. And then, this is the part I can't explain, the tapping came again, but it was behind me, from inside the house. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped the candle. My heart was hammering in my ears, and I swear I could feel something watching me. I did a quick lap around the house, checked the doors, the windows. Everything was locked. Everything was still. But that feeling, that pressure in the air, was growing. I went to my bedroom, locked the door, and shoved a chair under the handle. Call me paranoid, but it felt like something was circling the house, probing, looking for a way in. That's when I noticed it. A glow, faint electric blue, seeping through the cracks around the doorframe. It wasn't flickering like lightning. It was steady, unnatural, and it cast strange shadows across the floor. I pressed my ear against the door and heard nothing. Not the storm, not the wind, not the creak of the house settling. Just silence. For what felt like hours, I sat there on the floor, candle in one hand, a rusted old crowbar in the other. The glow never faded. If anything, it got brighter. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it was gone. No glow, no sound, just the distant rumble of thunder outside. I waited another 10 minutes before I dared to move. I unlocked the door and pushed it open slowly, crowbar raised. The house looked normal, the kitchen, the hallway. Everything was just as I'd left it, but there was something, the smell, ozone, sharp, metallic, like the air after a lightning strike but stronger. And on the hardwood floor, leading from the back door to the middle of the kitchen, there was a thin layer of metallic dust, silver, fine, almost shimmering in the candlelight. I followed the trail to the back door. It was still locked, deadbolt in place. But the handle felt warm, like someone had been gripping it. I didn't sleep that night. Hell, I didn't even sit down. I waited, crowbar in hand, until the sun came up and the power flickered back on. When I finally walked outside, the storm had passed, and everything looked normal. The grass was wet, the sky was clear. But in the muddy earth about 20 yards from the house, I saw them. Footprints. Not boots, not shoes, bare footprints. Long, narrow, and deep. Like whatever made them was heavy. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know what that glow was or how something or someone could have been in my house without breaking in. But I do know this, whatever it wasn't human. And I don't think it was supposed to be here. Thanks for joining us on this eerie journey. If this story sent chills down your spine, make sure to hit the like button. Let us know your thoughts, or if you've had any strange encounters in the comments below. We love hearing your stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more mysterious and otherworldly tales. And make sure to click the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. Until next time, stay safe and keep watching the skies.